Good evening and welcome back to Sports Talk ATL. I am Chase Earl, joined by Alex. Lord, no Braves yesterday. We get a doubleheader today. So we're going to start off talking Falcons, OTAs, and sort of the biggest storylines that we're looking at right now. We talked about the absences. It turns out those were nothing burgers. Kyle Pitts reportedly has a foot issue that he's dealing with, so that's why he's not there. We already said the Kirk Cousins thing was nothing. But what about the somethings? Like, what are we looking at this offseason? I think one of the biggest things is how we all are wondering is Michael Penix, and also in that same hand, what Zach Robinson's going to be in year 2 with Michael Penix under center, because with Kirk Cousins, it looked like the playbook was kind of like we couldn't move him. So he was in the pocket 99.4% of the time. I think
that's such a fake stat.
But it's that is legitimately the stat.
That's like literally impossible.
Yeah. I mean, I don't know. I mean, how immobile was he? Because I feel like even me, unathletic as hell, could have gotten out of the pocket a little.
State-sponsored media. That's what it is. They're going, oh, the Achilles isn't an issue. Well, I'm watching the games on Sundays, and it's an issue.
But now we have Penix. Now we can move. And we saw a little bit of it. The playbook was entirely different, and Zach Robinson was heralded as this boy genius, next Sean McVay. He's going to be a head coach in a couple of years because all the stuff that he's going to draw up. And we saw that a lot more in the last 3 weeks, and I think we're all excited to see it a lot more in these next 18 weeks.
Yeah, well,
hopefully more than 18 weeks.
The offense was productive, even with the statue that was Kirk Cousins. I mean, that Bucs game and Tampa Bay's defense wasn't anything to write home about, but God forbid. I mean, Kirk Cousins broke Matt Ryan's record, and the guy played a total of 9 games compared to a decade of Matt Ryan. Like, that just doesn't happen because of a bad defense. You have to have a good offense, but you still saw a condensed version of Zach Robinson's offense. And what I'm trying to get at is the first part of the season was immobility. The second part of the season of Kirk Cousins' start was arm strength. You start to see things that were less outside of the numbers. And when we did try and go outside of the numbers, think back to that Chargers game where he's just throwing pop-ups to cornerbacks on out routes that are taking them back for 6. So everything, I think, about the Falcons offense with Kirk Cousins was condensed. And the first part, it was a little less condensed. And the second part, after the Saints game, when he injured his shoulder, that was another thing that's like, you can tell me he's not hurt, but I'm seeing it on the field that you are trying to hide Kirk Cousins, and he was supposed to be a focal point. And you saw it. Michael Penix, everything was on, like, he can throw to all parts of the field. He does struggle in some areas, but it doesn't mean that he can't throw it there. More often than not, the places he are missing is, on the opposite side, I think it's the right side or the left side in the flats. And where he misses is to the boundary. So it's not an arm strength thing, it's an accuracy thing. So with Michael Penix Jr., not only are you going to get the part of Kirk Cousins when his shoulder was good, talking mobility, but you're going to get Michael Penix in a way that you could never get Kirk Cousins in his entire career, because Kirk Cousins has never had that kind of arm.
Yeah, and listen, I think back always to Kyle Shanahan's first season with the Atlanta Falcons when the Falcons started off 5-0. They end up 8-8. You had some offensive line issues, and then all of a sudden, I was sitting up here, and I still call it the dumbest take that I've ever made in the history of all my takes, and I've had some dumb ones where I was like, fire this guy after 1 year, and then next year, 2016. So once you get that second year in a system, especially with a young quarterback like Michael Penix, because he was there the entire season, so he's going to have a lot more time to work with the Drake Londons.
And generally speaking, he is in the, Michael Penix he's listening to everything that Z-Rob is telling Kirk Cousins on a day-to-day basis, game-wise. And then he's obviously in the quarterback meetings. He's doing everything game planning-wise. He's listening and talking to Kirk Cousins leading up to the games, going over game plans. So Michael Penix Jr. is capable of hitting the ground running, so to speak, though he is still a rookie. And I think that the biggest thing with Zach Robinson, I think, just think about maybe, when you start a new job and you're thinking about, the logistics of just the building, let alone the actual, production that you're providing for your job. Zach Robinson's worried about a million different things, whether it's his family. I don't know if he's married, whether it's just getting to the building of Flowery Branch, whether it's finding his routine throughout the season, whether it's, and that's not even in-game adjustments that you're trying to make and trying to attack these defenses doing. So all of that is not going to be an issue in year 2, let alone knowing who Drake London is, what his strengths are, Darnell Mooney, Kyle Pitts, Bijan.
And even despite everything that he had to deal with, quarterback changes, Kirk Cousins being immobile, Kirk Cousins being injured, you saw career years from Bijan Robinson, Drake London, Darnell Mooney. So there were a lot of good things, even despite everything that he had to deal with. What about positional battles that we're going to be looking at? And I think you could start right here across the defensive line. Like, are we going to see Jalen Walker and James Pierce immediately as rookies have significant impacts? Are we going to see a lot of Leonard Floyd, Arnold Ebiketie? I think everyone wants to see the new guys, but it usually doesn't turn out that way, especially with pass rushers, which is a position where it takes a little bit of time to grow up, mature, and have an impact at this level.
I don't remember who said it. It's probably like one of those hard-nosed defensive coordinators. I don't know who it was, but you got to earn the right to rush the passer. And quite frankly, the Falcons haven't done a very good job of doing that. You got to stop the offense running the ball on first down and second down, early downs. Then you get them in yourself in an advantageous position to rush the passer. And that is all dictated by personnel. Like, nobody is really confusing James Pierce Jr. with a run-stuffing edge. You get bigger up front on the early downs, so you're looking at guys like David Onyemata. You're looking at Zach Harrison, Rukaroro. Those 3 guys, kind of in a traditional 3-4 look with maybe a Leonard Floyd and whoever comes out on the other side in terms of who is the better run defender of a Jalen Walker or an Arnold Ebiketie. And then you go from there. And then I think when you start to look about exotic things, that's when you're in your third down. You've got James Pierce, Jalen Walker, Zach Harrison, Caden Ellis, Troy. You got all your speed on the field.
Yeah, and I think the other place you can look at, and really when you look at these positional battles, whether it be on the offense or the defense, we did just bring back Ryan Newsale, so he looks like he's going to be the starting center. There isn't really any worthwhile competition there. We'll see if any's added throughout the offseason. It's mostly on the defensive side of the ball, and it mostly involves these rookies because you got Billy Bowman Jr., who we're all excited about. The Falcons have spoken highly about. They view him as a nickel. He's going to be in that conversation with Clark Phillips and D. Alford, who you give Billy Bowman a legitimate chance to win that battle based off what we've seen from those two. And then you obviously have Xavier Watts on the back end. Can he step in and immediately be a day 1 starter, and he'll be competing with Jordan Fuller?
You've got 3 defensive backs battling for both of those spots. Don't forget about DeMarco Hellams on the safety spot. He didn't play any last year. He got injured. And we didn't even mention Braylon Trice in that edge room. He is an underrated run defender. I think everybody, when he was coming out of Washington, he led the countries in pressure. So everybody was thinking this guy was going to be this star pass rusher. He's coming off an ACL. So I think expectations should be tempered first and foremost. But he's another guy that I think his role early is going to be on those run stopping downs. But on the back end, like you just mentioned, I mean, Jordan Fuller, I think you would be pretty foolish to not have him as the favorite because he is the veteran of the group. And obviously Xavier Watts is this intellectual safety that, he went to Notre Dame. He's this, highfalutin guy who, everybody
going to Notre Dame and being an intellectual is kind of like the Julian Edelman wide receiver scat
play lacrosse.
He's fast for a white guy. He's fast for a white guy.
That's exactly what it is. And so those things give him a leg up. But what I am kind of like interested in this safety competition in particular, I do think the veteran Jordan Fuller has a case. But like this entire defense doesn't have like an enforcer or like, the goon in hockey where it's like, that guy is going to make sure that nobody comes across the middle of the field without thinking about that guy. And DeMarco Hellams is that guy. No regard for his body. I mean, that's the kind of guy you hate playing against. So I think even he, maybe an early down role, shouldn't be
and you know
forgotten
who else
about.
is a little bit like that, even though he's a lot smaller, is Billy Bowman.
Yeah.
And whether he play, and that's another piece that's super versatile. Like he could be playing safety. He played safety primarily at Oklahoma. They view him as a nickel, but that's always kind of a versatile place. And I think the last position battle is actually on special teams. We talked about it last week. But Younghoe Koo will not be handed this. Can he go out there and prove that he's still the guy that he was a couple years ago? It was more about the injury than it was the yips. Or are we going to be looking at a new kicker in Atlanta?
I think best case scenario is Koo was injured. I know there's been a lot of talk about the mechanical stuff. I'm not going to get into that because, I still kick with my toe if I had to. But
if you're on College Game Day, if you ever get that call,
I'm right to the left guy. It's a lot like my golf shot. Like it's this way or it's beautiful. And, it's 25% of the time beautiful.
Hey, that's enough for the money. Man. I'll take it.
I think Koo, best case scenario is obviously he squashes all concerns. And this German kicker is brought in purely just to raise some blood pressure in that special teams room. Because yes, you can find good kickers just on the side of the street these days. But obviously you want your guy Koo, who's just last year had a game-winning field goal that a lot of people have forgotten about.
And just last year, he was quite literally after that. Early last season, not only did he have a 15, he was the most accurate kicker in NFL history. And all of a sudden, we're talking about. So yes, obviously getting the most accurate kicker in NFL history would help this team a lot. We got some more Falcons talk coming up after the break. On the defensive side of the ball, there's a ton of excitement. There's a ton of question marks. We talked a little bit about them in the first segment, but one of the biggest question marks is what can Jeff Ulbrich bring to this defense, right? Jimmy Lake was abysmal. And when he was hired, we all kind of sat here and we said, well, we'll give it a shot because I don't like to count anyone out before I've seen it, but there was not the resume deserving of being a defensive coordinator in the league. And obviously had a relationship with Raheem Morris. And we saw front and center that he had no business being a defensive coordinator. And Jeff Ulbrich, we obviously saw back in 2020 what the combination of Morris and Ulbrich were able to do when Dan Quinn was fired. And that defense took a big step forward despite not having any talent. Well, this defense has a lot more talent, which is where the excitement stems from about the possibilities of what this might look like.
It can't be worse. Like that's the thing. It can't possibly be worse. And I'm not even saying that ironically, like, it really can't. It literally can't be worse. I mean, you saw it. Raheem Morris trusted the wrong guy. Jimmy Lake, up until the bye week, had the Falcons defense playing God knows what. I mean, we were playing every which way. We were letting, if you wanted to throw a 7-yard pass down the field every single play, we let you. Matthew Judon was acquired for a very high valued pick, and he was dropping into a coverage at such a high rate. I mean, what the hell was that? There were so many different instances where at some point, Raheem Morris goes, all right, I got to take over. And you saw that. At the bye week, the Falcons defense had a turnaround. And it had nothing to do with Jimmy Lake. It had nothing to do with the personnel. It just had with the fact that Raheem Morris came in and said, I have got to start taking over. At least I've got to start being in these meetings myself and kind of instilling what I want the defense to be. And you saw a turnaround. And I think Jeff Ulbrich is going to have a little bit of flexibility or freedom, so to speak, to kind of execute what he wants. But he's executing Raheem Morris's vision. That is the plan. And that is as simple as can be. Now, what does that look like? You hear the same damn thing all the time. It's multiplicity. It's this versatile scheme that can match up in a bunch of different ways. Well, Jeff Ulbrich, what he wants to do is try and make it simple where everybody knows what they're doing no matter what the offense is in. And I think that if you're the Falcons and you're a Falcons fan, that's great, because the one thing that keeps sticking in my mind and I cannot get over is in week 18, Raheem Morris comes into the podium after Bryce Young and the Panthers of all teams lights us on fire. We lose in overtime. It was absolutely embarrassing. Panthers fans think that they've got the second coming of Jesus Christ and Bryce Young because of what they did to our Falcons defense. He goes, miscommunication on the back end. We've got 3 All-Pros on the back end. We had A.J. Terrell, Justin Simmons, and Jesse Bates, with Mike Hughes also, who is not an All-Pro, but a veteran. We have miscommunication on the back end with those kind of, that acumen. That's a coaching issue. Hopefully, that is no longer the case.
And listen, I don't know X's and O's of defense like better than any of you guys out there, but maybe slightly, maybe slightly better than some of you guys out there. But there's probably some of you that know way more about defenses. But I know Jeff Ulbrich and Jimmy Lake or whoever is coaching these knows a lot more. But if I were a defensive coordinator, what I would be looking for, and you talked about multiplicity, but is versatility and just guys that can do so many different things. They're like weapons that you can use in so many different ways. And when I look at this Falcons defense, especially with this draft class, I see that all over the place. We know about Caden Ellis, a guy who led the team in sacks last year, but he's an off-ball linebacker. And you expect Jalen Walker to kind of be able to do a similar sort of thing if he's asked to do something like that. And then you have whatever Divine Diablo can bring, and you have Troy Anderson. And then you look at the secondary, and Billy Bowman's a guy who played safety, but he's going to be playing nickel. Like, what can he do? You mentioned DeMarco Helms, who's a thumper that can be up in the box, but can also play safety. You got Xavier Watts. The questions I have the most are at the cornerback position, but across the defensive line, you got guys like Zach Harrison who can rush the passer from the interior. He can stuff the run from the interior. He can rush the passer from the outside. You can say the same thing about Rook. So there's so many guys I view that can do different things, and I'm just kind of waiting for a coach like Jeff Ulbrich that maybe can see their strengths and accentuate them in the right moments. And I think that's what makes me the most excited about the potential of this defense with a guy who actually knows what he's doing, calling the shots.
Yeah, new defensive line coach, Nate Ollie, is an attacking style defensive line. Like, to get in the nitty-gritty of it.
That's a good name to bring up because not a lot of people know about
generally,
him.
So 2 coaches got fired from the Falcons last year. It was a defensive coordinator and a defensive line coach. And the defensive line coach was right there with Jimmy Lake and had asking guys to almost play out of position, playing techniques that weren't their strengths. And you're always going to have to do that to a certain extent, but you want to minimize weaknesses and accentuate strengths. That's what good coaches do. And Nate Ollie, the new defensive line coach, is a guy who wants to attack. He wants his defensive linemen to wreak havoc. So instead of what they would be like saying, you go into a gap and then you hold, they are going upfield. We are going to be going upfield, rushing the passer, trying to wreak havoc, whether it's they're running the ball or passing the ball. And I think for Falcons fans, that should be exciting, especially with a guy like Jalen Walker, who, let's call a spade a spade. Everything in his career is going to depend upon the coaches who are going to put him in a position to succeed, because he is that tweener kind of a guy that you do have to almost like. The perfect example I can always say is like how LSU has handled Harold Perkins, who is a very similar player as Jalen Walker. Do the exact opposite. Literally do the exact opposite. Jalen Walker needs to be attacking the football. Never ask this guy to go that way. He should never be going backwards. Do not ask this guy, although he can do it. He did it at Georgia. He can go backwards and drop into some sort of coverage. That's not where he's best. You know what he's best? Moving 1,000,000 miles an hour and running through a brick wall. That's all you have to do. Yeah. So put him in that position.
Yeah, and I just think literally from just tape that you watch of Jalen Walker and that Georgia defense, and particularly in that Texas game, and you talked about guys getting upfield. All right, you let everybody pin their ears back and rush upfield and let them get. But what are you worried about in that situation? A quarterback stepping up. And who's the exact perfect guy to have chasing that quarterback down in that situation? It's Jalen Walker, who's right there at the line of scrimmage, and like whichever way you go, because everyone's rushing to that point, I'm going to chase you down. Yep. And that's a lot what you saw from Harold Perkins in the first season. It wasn't like his sacks were right off the edge. It was like, oh, he comes right there, and he's just waiting for the quarterback to move. And once that quarterback moves, it's
shot out of a can.
Full speed ahead. And you saw that a lot in that Texas game. Go watch that Texas game, both of them. And it was like, he's kind of just waiting. And once you make that move, because the pressure is coming and you're going to have to move unless somebody's wide open, he's going to get you.
And I think James Pierce Jr. is much simpler than that. Jalen Walker.
His is point go.
Yeah. Third down, obvious passing down. You just put him on the edge somewhere. It doesn't matter where, and tell him to just go. Go get the quarterback. It's much simpler than Jalen Walker. I think it's almost like you can't screw this up. You can't screw James Pierce Jr. up.
And he's going to be in there on obvious passing downs. Like that is his job. And that's going to be his job probably his entire career. Like he did improve a lot and a lot of people talk about it. And if he does become a guy that you can rely upon in the run game, that's amazing. But early on in his career, it's going to be, hey, get to that point and let the defensive lineman get the sack, whatever it is. You create pressure off the edge, and that's what I expect to see. We got to go to break, but coming up after the break, Alex, I'm going to ask you the difficult question. The Braves are 25-28. They got a doubleheader with the Phillies. It could get worse by the time, if you're seeing this later in the day, it could get worse. I want to ask you, talk us off the ledge, Alex. That's what you like to do. What is going to save this Atlanta Braves season? Are we overreacting to all the nonsense that's happened over the last week? It's been a tough road for the Braves, who are 9.5 games, 10.5 games back, 8.5 games back, whatever it is, whenever you are watching this. But it's a lot of games back in the NL East as they remain under 500. And the return of Acuna, while electric, did not result in wins. And it has everybody freaking out. But let's try to keep it positive. What's making you still believe that this Braves team can not only just make the playoffs, but go on a run when they get there?
Well, I think you can start. I'll start with something that is concrete, and then I'll go to something that's, you're going to have to believe. The concrete thing is this pitching staff with a bad bullpen. This rotation, it is not what it was last year, which was the best rotation in baseball, minus maybe the Seattle Mariners, but it was still one or two, and it wasn't just one or two by like a little bit. They were the two best rotations in baseball, and it wasn't even particularly close. This rotation is on par with that rotation, and we don't have Spencer Strider back to form. That's something that you can lean on every single day, because when you go up there, you got a guy like Chris Sale, you got a chance to win. Hell, Spencer Strider is not, into form, and in game one of this Philly series, we had a chance to win. And Grant Holmes, I think, is the unsung hero thus far. Everybody in the rotation, Sale, Schwelly, AJ Smith-Shawver, Grant Holmes, all those guys have ERAs from like 3.4 to 3.6. And all of that is above league average. And again, that's not even talking about what Spencer Strider is going to provide. So when you got a guy who's throwing league average, above league average ball every single day, you're always going to have a chance to win baseball games.
Yeah, I'll stick with my first point being relatively simple, and it's the fact that we've been here before. We've quite literally been in very recent memory, and you could even say 3 of the seasons out of the last 4 we have been here in some capacity. One, you go back to 2022 when this team won 101 games. We were an under 500 baseball team around this time, and we came back from 10 games to win it. If the Braves go off on a similar run and win 100 games, they have a very good chance of not just they'll make the playoffs, obviously, but they very easily could win the division, because I don't know if anyone in this division is going to win over 100 games. It only happens by 1 or 2 teams every single year. Then you look at last year. I mean, this team was out of the playoff race, and they finished hot, and they made the playoffs. And that was with a lineup that was a shell of itself. Everybody on the team was injured, and they still finished 16 games over 500. And then you'll go to the obvious one, 2021. This team's under 500 until the last several weeks. Now, I will say, with the National League, especially the division being the way it is, you better not be under 500 in July, late July, All-Star break. Like, you better not be I believe August 1st, we were still under 500. That's when we finally got over the hump. So let's not do that, because I don't think you're going to make the playoffs, but there's a lot more time. So I think the fact that it's been done for not once, not twice, but 3 times in recent memories where the Braves have dug themselves into holes and been able to pull themselves back out. And I do believe this team's just as talented, if not more talented than all 3 of those teams, that making the playoffs is the goal. And we all know what can happen when you make them. Anything. The best Braves team lost in the first round. The worst one won the World Series. That's as simple as that.
Yeah. And I was just going to build right off that this lineup. So I'm going from the rotation. The rotation is good enough to win you a lot of baseball games. The second part of that is last year, we still made the playoffs. I'll admit, like, that rotation was better last year. This lineup today, they are not performing. It's still wildly more impressive than what it was last year. Again, we are starting Stuart Fairchild in the place of Ronald Acuna Jr. today. But guess what? That's not going to be the case for the totality of the rest of this season. This lineup today still has star power. It has still got a lot of power. Are people underperforming? Yes. And people will point to a last 162 game sample size of Matt Olson, of Austin Riley, of Sean Murphy, of Mike Harris, of Ozzie Albies. That's half the lineup, more than half the lineup. Guess what? The track record of them being good is more extensive than just last year. 3 years in a row, Austin Riley finished top 10 in the MVP voting. 3 years, Matt Olson was among the best, not first baseman, the best players in baseball. Mike Harris is a career 285 hitter for 3 seasons, 285 hitter. Ozzie Albies, multiple All-Stars, multiple Silver Sluggers. He's only 27 or 26, whatever. This isn't a 33-year-old where we're going, ooh, is this guy on the downslope of his career? Sean Murphy was injured last year. There's explanations for all of these things. And while you're not going to get that immediate satisfaction that we all might want, over the sample size of 2/3 of the rest of the season, the cream, you always say, will rise to the top. And these Braves, we've got star power.
Yeah, I have no doubt that this team is going to be several games over 500, probably within the next month. And then they'll probably finish somewhere around 15 to 25 games over 500. Like, I genuinely believe that, as long as they stay healthy, particularly talking about your stars that just came back, and Spencer Strider, who's still growing into things, and Ronald Acuna Jr. And then the last thing to me, it is the trade deadline. Like, you just
reinforcements.
If you go look at pretty much every single world, I'm not talking about that guy. When you go look at, the last previous champions, almost all of them went out there and made huge moves at the trade deadline. Like the Dodgers get Tommy Edman and a couple other guys, and Tommy Edman was like an MVP for them. And obviously the Braves in 2021, and the Rangers get Nathan Eovaldi and a bunch of other guys every single time. That the World Series champion usually is making the best moves at the trade deadline, and that has not happened yet. And while Alex Anthopoulos hasn't had the best trade deadline, he's had it once out of every 8 years. That's still a 15% chance. Like, we'll take it.
Yeah, and I just wanted to say reinforcements. And now that obviously does come with the trade deadline. And while you might not want to hear it, and you might not want to hear it, Jurickson Profar is going to be in the lineup if he is producing more than Eli White. And while you might not like that, and you might think that's dumb because we might not have him in October, hey, guess what? Getting to October is the first part of that equation. We got to get there to lose in October. And while we might not have him there, he might help us get there. And then on top of that, these are longer shots. These are guys we don't know who are coming back. They might not come back. And you got a guy in Joe Jimenez that if he does come back, it'll be right before the postseason. And Ronaldo Lopez, if he ever comes back, it'll be right before the postseason. So those two guys, while they are pipe dreams, they still can come back and make a difference.
And Craig Kimbrell, he's been lights out in Gwinnett. I definitely think you see him sooner rather than later. And listen, the Jurickson Pro, as long as he's out, he's the most hated man on this show, at least on this side of the table. But I agree with you. I mean, he goes out there and hits a home run in his first game. I mean, I'm going to be celebrating. Yeah, I'm going to be celebrating. I'm going to be like, dude, put him in the All-Star game. I do want to say one little caveat to all that thing. How sick will it make you when if Jurickson Profar comes back, has this big, second half of the season? Let's say he's a 300 hitter. He's hot. He has 18 home runs. He's a catalyst for why we go on to make the playoffs. And then guess what? The NLDS arrives and it's like, you can't play.
That's the Atlanta Braves, baby. That's another thing.
When's the last time we entered the postseason halfway to?
That's another thing. Battle tested. This fan base and the team, we are calloused. We have been through the rings of hell, and we have come out the other end okay.
I do want to say one last thing, and I say this all the time, but there is something about battling like you're playing for your playoff lives for 4 months before the start of the postseason, because every game has mattered for this team, and every game from here on out is going to matter to the Atlanta Braves. And if they go on there and make the playoffs, it's not going to be like, oh wow, like game started. No, we've been doing this for 150 days. Like the games are started. I really do think that does matter, and that's why you see so many wild card teams make pushes in October. We got a few more things to talk about coming up after the break. A recent report from Brian Windhorst of ESPN says that Giannis, if the Bucks abide by his wishes, would like to stay in the Eastern Conference. And I think that's a huge report because the Western Conference teams are the ones, when you look at the trade packages, that could get a little bit crazy. Like, if, for example, if the Thunder wanted to give away a trade package for Giannis, they could come up with something. Now, after being one of the best teams of all time and likely winning the championship, I don't know why they would, but they definitely could. Even a team like the Mavericks, if they were willing to part ways with Cooper Flag. Again, don't know why Nico Harrison would go that route again, parting ways with another quote-unquote generational talent, but they could. And then you got the Spurs and Rockets, who are teams that a lot of people are talking about, who have high draft picks, along with a lot of talented players that would interest the Milwaukee Bucks. So those are four of like the biggest teams where I'm like, they could make a really solid trade package that could challenge whatever the Hawks could offer. When you look at the Eastern Conference, there's not a lot. I mean, the Pacers aren't going to be making any big moves, and they don't really have anything that moves the needle unless they want to trade Tyrese Halliburton, which I just don't see that. Maybe the Magic could put together something, but is that where the Magic are at? The Boston Celtics don't really make a lot of sense. The 76ers, I guess, but not really. I don't really see much of that. Brooklyn could offer a bunch of picks, but is that what Milwaukee wants to do? Because they don't want to tank. They don't own their first round picks. And I look at the Hawks and I'm like, they could probably put together the best combination of picks. They have 2 this year, and they can offer first round picks in the future, 3 or 4 years down the line, that could be very valuable. And then they obviously have a tremendous young core that should intrigue a team like the Bucks that's trying to remain competitive.
Yeah, I look at, if you were looking at the landscape of the East and you were really being honest with ourselves, if we're Hawks fans, and who could come up with a better, there's maybe one team. I don't think you mentioned. I think Cleveland could put together a very enticing package. You know, you give them Jared Allen and Garland, and maybe throw in a kicker.
Well, if they're willing to talk Mobley and pieces, for sure.
So you know, that's my
Cleveland,
point.
Cleveland
my point.
Makes sense.
Cleveland could, and to, you know, kind of get over the hump, so to speak. And you know, you've got a guy there in Donovan Mitchell who has been, you know, he hasn't gotten there, but it's not like this guy is some bum in the playoffs. Like, he's a superstar. Might just need that little bit of extra juice. I'd look at Cleveland as the only team, honestly, that could make a real run at Giannis in terms of all-star or all-star caliber players with a combination of picks to keep the Bucks relevant enough to be competitive, but also secure some of their future, in which they gave away for Dame.
Yeah, I would say Cleveland makes a little bit of sense. In terms of picks, they can't really offer much because they're going to be picking at the end of the first round, presumably, if Giannis is able to stay healthy, and they're going to continue getting number 1 seeds. That's what I would predict if that were to happen. But yeah, so we'll see. All these things are always fluid. I mean, how many times have you heard reports, especially around a star player, if you're a Hawks fan, when you're like, oh my God, that fits our narrative. Like, it's going to happen.
I don't understand why franchises, and listen, like, I guess I get it. I want my team to do right by the superstars that have gotten us championships or close to championships in Atlanta. And, you know, I'll do anything for them. But, like, also, you're not bigger than the A. You're not bigger than LSU.
I don't get it either.
Like, if I'm Milwaukee, I'll take into consideration what you want, Giannis, and I'll absolutely try and do what's best for you. But you're going to come behind the Bucks. You are not the Bucks. You got us a championship. Thank you very much. Now we suck. It's time to prioritize.
Well, I think it's a two-way street. I definitely think Giannis is involved in this, but I think he understands it. And I don't think Giannis wants to leave Milwaukee high and dry. Like,
I don't think so.
I don't think he's going to completely be like,
that's not the case with a lot of these jokers. A lot of these jokers will literally be like, Dame literally was like, no, I'm not going anywhere. And then he, you know, Milwaukee came across his desk and he was like, okay, I'll go to Milwaukee.
Yeah.
Or the any other countless trades where you're like questioning the return. And
it's some of them have no trade clauses. So obviously that plays. I mean, Giannis doesn't. Giannis does not have it. But I agree. I think it's going to be the best offer. But if Giannis says, hey, I want to go there, they will work hard to come up with an offer that's at least comparable. I think that's how it goes. I don't think the Bucks are going to be like, nope, we're going to take the lame duck deal. Oh yeah, what do you want, Peyton Pritchard? All right, we'll send you to Boston. You want to go to Boston? Here, we'll take your 6th man of the year candidate. But that's at least a little bit of good news on the Giannis front for the Hawks. And college football news over the weekend, we officially are going to be reseeding. Now, this was the number one argument that we didn't even have an argument. This was the number one agreement that we're like, this is absolutely stupid. Why the hell are they giving the ACC winner a first round bye? That makes absolutely no sense. It never made any sense. And thankfully, they're starting to do the sensible things. You don't get to a first round bye. It's just whatever you're ranked at the end of the season. And this would have had a pretty major impact on this last year's college football playoff. But thankfully, it only took 1 year. And I said it would only take them 1 year for this to be like, this is stupid. I don't know why it took 1 year because it should have never happened in the first place. Like everyone sat up here and said, this is moronic. This is stupid. What the hell are we doing? Why are we doing these kitty boy trophies to teams that don't deserve it? What is this? This is college football. It's $1 billion league. It's not freaking Little League, but they had to do it 1 year and realize, okay, that was stupid. And then thankfully now they're gone.
Well, I think the next thing, if you win your conference, you still get an automatic bid. Even if you are, the Big 12's highest seed and wins is 16th seed, you're still going to the playoffs, and which means you'll probably be jumping some SEC teams that are just right outside of that cut line. So that is still there is still an emphasis on winning the conference. There is for the SEC now less of an emphasis, and there was already a little bit less of that, tang in Atlanta this past season. I think a lot of people would agree.
I think both in the SEC and the Big Ten. I mean, those games really didn't matter, and it didn't really matter if you won it. Now, I do think there's a pride aspect to it. There's something that comes with winning the SEC. There's always been that, even since the 4-team playoff, the 12-team playoff, and however many playoffs. I do think as long as it's around, there will be some pride. But you're right. I have no real problem with conference champions making it one from each league. I do kind of like that because I think it adds some intrigue in those leagues.
Well, I think the perfect example of, why it should happen is Arizona State.
Yeah. I got no problem with that. I think that adds intrigue to those games. I mean, I'm watching Kansas State versus Iowa State week 12, which wouldn't matter, but it's like that team gets in the Big 12 championship.
And you have
I'm watching Colorado.
And they were to the playoffs.
And dude, they almost beat Texas. So I really don't have a problem. My next biggest thing, I would like to get rid of the automatic bye to the highest group of 5 team, or not bye, but automatic bid to the group of 5 team. If you're in the top 12 or top 14 or top 16, you deserved it. But if you're not, you don't get in. I think that one's stupid.
Well, it's just clear as day that those teams.
I mean, Boise State was in it.
Those teams are a step behind everybody else. It's as simple as that.
But Boise State was in it. They would have gotten in no matter what. They just wouldn't have been the 3 seed. So if you earn it, there's plenty of examples of Cincinnati's and UCFs and teams that would have been in the college football playoff. I just don't need to see an unranked Tulane going in there and taking a 12 seed Alabama spot. I think that's stupid. So that's the next thing that I would like to eliminate, but they're going to expand it.
And they're going to expand it. And to that point, we have got to start taking these teams, conferences. If you just make the conference championship, you get, an automatic bid, sort of a thing with the SEC and the Big Ten. And some teams, some little guys might not love that I'm saying that, but guess what? Your conference is worse.
They're
it's
close.
That simple.
I think if they go to 16, it could go 4-4. The top 4 in the Big Ten, the top 4 in the SEC. I know they've discussed that. Wouldn't be surprised if that happens. Probably deserve that.
The thing is you don't even need that to happen
because it's going to
just happen.
Yeah, I mean, it happened this year. It's going to happen this next year. It's going to happen the year after that. We're really talking about whether the 6th or the 7th SEC team. The Big Ten, y'all don't have 6 or 7 because your conference is so crappy.
Well, no, you
do.
You've got Indiana who just got shat on.
Well, that was like 2.
Yeah. Well, they're 4th. Because Oregon, Penn State, Ohio State, Indiana was their 4th best team, and they got.
But then once you get to 5, it's like, what the hell am I watching?
Nebraska and Dylan Iola doing his best Pat Mahomes.
Michigan's standing there like, we beat Bama.
Yeah,
we beat Bama. Y'all have that, and honestly,
you did.
Michigan has kind of a clutch team recently. They just smoked Ohio State even when they sucked, and then they come out and they beat Bama to end the season.
The brakes off.
Oh my God, what an embarrassment that was for the Crimson Tide.
Yeah.
And how about DeBoer? We do got to go to break, but how about DeBoer saying, "Oh, no one would have made the playoffs with our schedule, but you lost to Oklahoma and Vandy, or you would have been in. You would have been in. Tough schedule, but dumb comment. Dumb. Yeah, we will. We can't talk about that after the break." Wrapping up our show with Kalen DeBoer's comments, he says, nobody or most teams would not have made the playoffs with Alabama's schedule. And to one point, it's fair because they did beat Georgia.
Most teams, quote unquote, most teams.
Yeah, well, probably only 15 teams might have. But at the end of the day, I don't think you can be saying these things when you have a fan base like Alabama that's breathing down your neck after you just took Nick Saban's team and lost 3 games to one, your biggest rival on the road to Tennessee, who Nick Saban had never lost to, outside of one other time in his career. And then you lost to Vandy and Oklahoma being the biggest one. Blown out 24-3. Yeah, with the playoff spot right there. It was just handed to you.
All you had to do is beat this 500 Oklahoma team.
That everyone was
that was starting the water boy.
That LSU went the following week and beat by 20. The same LSU you beat by 30.
Yeah,
it was
transitive property is a B word.
It is a dangerous game in the SEC.
But to be fair, what he didn't say isn't a lie. Like literally, and this is just we could just talk about the SEC. Most SEC teams wouldn't have gotten.
I think what Alabama fans would have liked to heard based on their experience with Nick Saban is we didn't do good enough. Yeah. That's all we want to hear. We don't want to hear, oh well, James Madison wouldn't have made it with our playoffs. It's like, okay, no crap. We're Alabama. Like, we need to make this. Like, we just won 7 national titles over the last 15 seasons.
And now we're talking about the schedule.
Yeah, come on. The schedule's
the chickens have come home to roost for the Crimson Tide. Welcome back to Earth.
Welcome back to our side.
I love it.
That wraps up our show. Thank you guys so much for joining us. We'll be back with you tomorrow.